The little girl had been dreaming of this day for as long as she could remember. Ever since she first touched a piano at her school, she had known that music was a part of her, something that made her heart beat faster and her spirit feel alive. Her fingers would dance over the keys, creating sounds that seemed to come straight from her soul. Today, she was finally going to perform in front of real judges, in a big hall filled with people who had never seen her play before. The excitement in her chest was almost too much to bear, and at the same time, there was a tiny spark of nervousness that made her stomach twist. She walked into the bright room, looking around at the huge stage and the large crowd of people sitting in rows. The lights were warm but glaring, making her feel small in comparison. Behind a long table sat 3 judges, looking serious and ready to decide who would move on in the competition. The girl held her head high, trying to remind herself that she had practiced every day for months. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, and now it was real. She had to focus even if her hands shook slightly. As she approached the keyboard, she noticed the judges whispering among themselves. They looked at her and then back at each other with expressions that made her pause. One of the judges raised a hand slightly, as if to stop her. She had read about moments like this in stories of other performers, but experiencing it was something different. A wave of fear washed over her, but she took a deep breath, trying to push it away. She could not let anyone take this moment from her. This was her chance to show who she was and what she could do. The first touch of her fingers on the keys was like greeting an old friend. The sound was soft at first, hesitant, but it grew more confident with each note. Her hands moved with a kind of rhythm that seemed natural, almost as if they were guided by something deeper than herself. She felt her worries melt away as she lost herself in the music. The room seemed to change. The bright lights and the rows of seats became invisible. All that existed was the sound she was creating, the story she wanted to tell through her piano. From the side, she could see the judges leaning back in their chairs, their eyes narrowing. They were clearly debating something among themselves. One of them made a gesture, raising a hand as if to signal her to stop. The girl felt a knot form in her stomach. She paused for just a moment, but her determination did not falter. She had come here for this moment, and she would not let fear or doubt take it away. Slowly, she continued, pressing the keys with more confidence, letting her emotions guide the music. The audience was quiet, watching her closely. Some faces showed surprise, others curiosity. A few people whispered to their neighbors, pointing at her small figure sitting alone at the keyboard. The girl ignored everything except the music. Each note carried a piece of her story, her struggles, and her dreams. She wanted them to understand what music meant to her, even if they did not know her personally. She wanted them to feel what she felt inside. As she played, she remembered the hours she had spent practicing at home. Her fingers remembered every note, every pause, every gentle lift and press of the keys. She thought about the people who had supported her, her family and her teachers, and how they had encouraged her to keep going even when learning something new seemed impossible. She felt their presence with her, as if they were sitting right beside her on the stage. That gave her strength. She would not stop because she wanted to honor them and herself. The music started to flow more freely now. Her initial hesitation was gone. The song she had chosen was challenging, full of highs and lows, soft whispers, and bold statements. Every emotion she felt came out through her hands. The judges watched closely, some frowning slightly, others looking impressed. One judge leaned forward, eyes wide, trying to read her expression and anticipate her next move. But the little girl was in her own world, guided by her love for the music. She did not notice the whispers or the frowns. She only knew the keys under her fingers, the sound filling the room, and the story she wanted to tell. Suddenly, the lead judge stood up, signaling for her to stop again. The room seemed to hold its breath. The audience looked back and forth, confused by the interruption. The girl froze for a brief second, unsure what to do. She looked at the judge, then at the keyboard, then back at the judge. Her heart raced. She knew she had a choice. Stop and obey, or continue and risk their disapproval. But deep inside, She felt a surge of courage she had never felt before. She would not let anyone silence her music. Slowly, she moved her fingers back to the keys and began to play again, louder this time, with more emotion. The sound was powerful, filling every corner of the room. The audience gasped, some leaning forward in their seats, captivated by the music. It was not just notes and rhythms. It was a story of courage, determination, and love for something pure. The little girl poured her heart into every measure, letting the piano speak for her. She could feel the room changing. People were leaning closer, listening with awe, forgetting for a moment that they were watching a competition. They were witnessing a little girl who refused to give up, who refused to leave the keyboard. As she played, she noticed a small smile forming on the face of one of the judges. The others still looked concerned, unsure if this display of defiance was proper. But the girl did not care. She felt a freedom she had never felt before, the joy of expressing herself completely. The music flowed from her fingertips like water, smooth and unstoppable. She could feel the story inside her moving through her hands, reaching out to everyone in the room. The song was nearing its climax. She had built it carefully, layering emotion upon emotion, taking the audience on a journey. She could hear the gasps, the soft whispers, the occasional sigh of amazement. The judges had stopped signaling, instead watching silently, some leaning forward, others with wide eyes. It was clear that the music had touched them in a way that words could not. Finally, the last note lingered in the air, soft and trembling. She sat still for a moment, hands hovering above the keys, breathing deeply. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then slowly, applause began to rise. At first, it was cautious, almost hesitant. Then it grew louder, more enthusiastic, until the whole hall was clapping and cheering. The little girl smiled, a mixture of relief and joy washing over her. She had done it. She had faced fear, defiance, and uncertainty, and had let her music speak. The judges looked at her, some nodding in admiration, others still processing what had happened. She stepped back from the keyboard, feeling a new sense of pride and confidence. This was only the beginning of her journey, but it was a powerful start. She had proven to herself that courage, determination, and love for what she does can overcome doubt and fear. As she left the stage, the cheers and claps following her, she felt a warmth in her heart, knowing that this moment would stay with her forever. It was the moment she refused to leave the keyboard, the moment she claimed her music and her voice, and the moment she inspired everyone who watched her. The little girl walked off with her head held high, ready for whatever came next, knowing that she had already achieved something extraordinary. The little girl sat back down at the keyboard after a short pause, feeling the energy of the audience and the silent curiosity of the judges pressing on her. The moment she had feared and hoped for at the same time had arrived. She could feel all eyes on her, and yet, she felt a calm determination settling inside. Every nerve in her body told her to play, to continue, and to pour herself into the music as she always did. She had refused to leave the keyboard, and now she needed to show that she belonged there, no matter what anyone thought. She started with a soft, slow melody, letting her fingers glide gently across the keys. The sound was tender and fragile, like a small story being whispered into the ears of those willing to listen. She could see a few faces in the audience leaning in, listening intently. Some had their hands pressed together as if praying, others simply sat in awe. The music was carrying her feelings, her courage, and the little girl felt a strong connection to everyone in the room. She knew that this was more than just a performance. It was a conversation between her and everyone around her. The judges watched silently, some leaning forward, their faces unreadable. One of them raised a finger slightly, possibly thinking she should stop, but the little girl ignored it. She was not doing this to challenge anyone. She was doing it because she needed to finish what she had started, because the music was a part of her and could not be interrupted. Her heart beat in rhythm with the melody, and each note seemed to echo her thoughts and emotions. She was not just playing. She was speaking through the instrument. As she continued, she felt herself becoming lost in the music. Her fingers moved instinctively, following a pattern that she had practiced countless times. Yet somehow, each moment felt new. The melody grew, carrying a soft tension that made the audience lean forward even more. Some people were biting their lips, some with wide eyes, mesmerized by the skill and emotion that a child could express so deeply. The little girl noticed some smiles forming, little sparks of encouragement from the people around her, and it gave her more courage. She felt a bond forming with the audience through her music. She remembered the moments at home, where she would sit for hours, learning each piece until she could play it without thinking. Her parents would watch from the doorway, often just as amazed as anyone in this hall, amazed at her dedication, her passion, and her love for the music. She thought about those quiet nights and early mornings, the fingers aching from practice, and the moments of frustration when something did not sound right. All of that had led to this moment, and she could feel a deep pride in herself. She had worked for this and no one could take it away. The judges whispered among themselves. The girl caught glimpses of the concern in their eyes, but she did not waver. One judge motioned subtly, perhaps thinking she should stop, but her focus was unbroken. Every note, every pause, every subtle lift of her fingers was filled with meaning. She was telling a story of persistence, of courage, and of love for her art. She did not need anyone to approve of it. The music was already her voice, and the audience was beginning to understand. She noticed a few people leaning forward, their hands clapping lightly to encourage her. Gradually, she added more strength to her playing, building the song to a soft crescendo. The music filled the room, reaching the far corners where some audience members were struggling to contain their excitement. She noticed some children in the crowd watching her closely, their eyes wide with wonder. They were seeing someone their age achieving something remarkable, and it made them dream a little bigger. The little girl felt a gentle smile form on her lips, realizing that her courage was touching others in ways she could not have imagined. The melody then shifted, becoming more playful, lighter, and faster. She added small flourishes, delicate trills, and subtle changes in rhythm that brought a new energy to the performance. She could feel the crowd reacting. Whispers of amazement floated through the air. The judges were still serious, but there was a hint of admiration in their eyes. One judge seemed to lean back, arms crossed, watching carefully as the girl proved that she was not just talented but fearless. Her refusal to leave the keyboard had turned what could have been a moment of tension into a showcase of courage and skill. Every now and then, she glanced up briefly, trying to read the faces around her. She could see people leaning closer, smiles appearing, eyes shining with emotion. It gave her a warmth in her chest that made her fingers move even more freely. She was no longer just playing the notes. She was performing them with her entire heart. The little girl felt a powerful sense of control and freedom, knowing that she could express herself fully and nothing could stop her. The music was flowing through her, uniting her with everyone in the room, breaking down barriers without a single word. Then came a quiet moment in the song, a part where she needed to let the notes linger, creating a gentle pause that spoke volumes. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly with anticipation. The room seemed to hold its breath again, waiting for the next sound. She struck a note softly, letting it resonate through the hall. The audience leaned in, captivated by the delicate touch, feeling the vulnerability and strength in every sound. This was the moment where her courage truly shone, because she was not afraid to be small and gentle, even in front of so many people. The little girl continued, her music shifting once more, building toward a bright, joyful climax. She added flourishes and layers, each note more confident than the last. She could feel the energy in the room changing. People were clapping lightly, some swaying to the rhythm, caught up in the story she was telling. Even the judges were leaning in, their expressions softening, their previous skepticism melting away. Her refusal to leave the keyboard was no longer defiance. It was a statement of her dedication, her spirit, and her extraordinary talent. As she reached the final section of her piece, she felt a rush of pride and accomplishment. The notes flowed faster, more confidently, with every ounce of emotion she could pour into them. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and grace. The audience could feel the intensity, the passion, and the joy that she was sharing. The little girl's heart pounded, but it was not from fear anymore. It was from the excitement of achieving something incredible, of showing herself and everyone else that courage and determination could overcome doubt. When the last note sounded, it lingered in the room for a moment, a soft echo of the story she had told. She held her hands above the keyboard, letting the sound fade naturally. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was filled with respect, admiration, and amazement. Then, slowly, the applause began. At first gentle, it grew louder, stronger, filling the room with warmth and encouragement. The little girl's face lit up with a smile, a mixture of relief and joy. She had done more than play a song. She had captured hearts, inspired courage, and created a memory that would stay with her forever. She finally looked at the judges. There were nods of approval, small smiles, and gestures of respect. One judge even leaned forward, whispering to the others, clearly impressed. The little girl realized that her determination had not only allowed her to complete the performance, but had also earned admiration and respect. She had refused to leave the keyboard, and in doing so, she had proven to herself and everyone else that talent and courage could shine through even the toughest challenges. As she stepped back from the keyboard, the applause continued, the cheers growing louder. She felt a warmth in her chest, a combination of pride, happiness, and a deep sense of achievement. She had taken the first step in a journey that would be full of challenges and victories. This moment was hers, a reminder that refusing to give up, refusing to leave, and staying true to oneself could lead to something extraordinary. The little girl left the stage with her head held high, ready to face the next part of her journey, knowing that her courage and music had already touched the hearts of many. The little girl had never felt so alive. The applause from the audience still echoed in her ears, but she knew that the judges were watching closely, waiting to see what she would do next. She had already shown courage by refusing to leave the keyboard, but now it was time to prove her skill and her heart through the music. She sat down once more, letting her fingers find the keys she knew so well. Each one was familiar, yet full of new possibilities, waiting for her to explore. She began with a soft introduction, allowing the music to rise gently like a morning sun. Her fingers moved lightly, creating a delicate sound that filled the room with warmth. The audience leaned in, listening to the purity and innocence in each note. The little girl felt a sense of calm as the music carried her thoughts, her dreams, and her determination. She had practiced this piece many times, but playing it here, in front of so many people, gave it a new life. Every touch of the keys was meaningful, every note a reflection of her courage. The judges were still silent, their expressions hard to read. One judge shifted slightly in their chair, frowning as if unsure what to expect. Another watched with interest, leaning forward with a thoughtful look. The little girl noticed their reactions but did not let them distract her. She knew that this moment was hers, and she would let the music speak for itself. Her hands moved instinctively, flowing over the keys with a combination of skill and emotion. The room seemed to shrink around her, leaving only the sound and the connection she felt with everyone listening. The melody began to rise, becoming more complex and emotional. She added subtle pauses, soft touches, and flowing arcs in the music, creating a story that was both powerful and gentle. The audience responded instinctively, leaning forward, holding their breath, and letting the music wash over them. The little girl noticed a few children in the crowd, their eyes wide with admiration and wonder. She smiled slightly, realizing that her courage and talent were inspiring others in ways she could not have imagined. That thought gave her even more strength. The judges whispered quietly among themselves. The little girl caught glimpses of their gestures, small nods and brief frowns. She knew they were debating whether to intervene, perhaps thinking she had gone too far or should stop. But her focus remained unbroken. She understood that music was not just about technique. It was about feeling and expression. She played each note with intention, letting the sound flow naturally, refusing to be constrained by anyone's doubts. She was telling a story that was uniquely hers as the piece progressed. She introduced a series of fast, lively passages, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision and energy. The room filled with excitement, and the audience began to respond more openly. Soft claps, murmurs of amazement, and the occasional gasp could be heard as the music carried them on a journey of emotion and skill. The little girl felt a surge of pride and joy, knowing that she was creating an experience that would stay with the listeners long after the performance ended. She remembered all the early mornings and late nights spent practicing, the moments of frustration when a difficult passage seemed impossible, and the tiny victories when she finally mastered it. Her parents had encouraged her every step of the way, their support and love guiding her through challenges and doubts. She felt their presence now, as if they were sitting beside her on the stage, giving her the confidence to continue. The little girl realized that all the effort, all the determination, had led to this exact moment, where she could show not only her skill but her heart. The judges continued to watch, their expressions slowly shifting. One of them leaned back, folding their arms with a thoughtful look, while another seemed impressed, eyes widening slightly as they recognized the complexity and beauty of the performance. The little girl was aware of them, but she did not let their opinions control her. She was playing for herself and for everyone who had come to witness the courage and emotion in her music. She wanted the room to feel her story, to connect with her journey without needing words. The music then softened, taking on a more reflective tone. Her fingers moved with care, each note chosen to convey vulnerability and honesty. The audience was captivated, some holding their breath, others leaning forward to catch every subtle nuance. The little girl felt a sense of intimacy in the moment, as if she were sharing a secret with everyone present. She had never felt this close to an audience before, and it made her performance even more meaningful. She was no longer just a child playing the piano. She was a storyteller, sharing a piece of her soul. Suddenly, the melody shifted once more, building tension and drama. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently, adding layers and dynamics that made the piece feel alive. The audience responded with growing excitement, their eyes following her hands, their bodies swaying slightly to the rhythm. The little girl felt the energy of the room, feeding it back into her performance. She was in a flow, a place where fear and doubt could not reach her. Every note was a declaration of her determination and courage, a proof that refusing to leave the keyboard had been the right choice. The judges seemed to be silently arguing among themselves, some nodding in admiration, others still hesitant. One of them raised a hand slightly, perhaps thinking she should stop, but the little girl ignored it completely. She knew that the music was her voice and that it had to continue. The room was filled with tension and excitement, and the little girl thrived in it, letting her emotions guide the performance. She wanted to show that determination and passion could overcome hesitation and doubt. As she approached the final section, the piece reached a powerful climax. Her hands moved swiftly, with grace and precision, creating a cascade of sound that filled every corner of the hall. The audience was fully engaged, clapping along softly, some even whispering their admiration. The little girl felt a sense of triumph as she played, knowing that she had overcome fear, doubt, and the pressure of the moment. She had refused to leave the keyboard, and now she was reaping the rewards of her courage and dedication. Finally, the last notes sounded, soft yet full of meaning. She held her hands above the keys, letting the music linger in the air for a moment longer. The room was silent, as if holding its breath, and then slowly, the applause began. It started as a gentle clap but grew quickly into a powerful ovation. The little girl smiled, a mix of relief, pride, and joy flooding her heart. She had not only played a beautiful piece but had also inspired and captivated everyone present. The judges nodded, some offering quiet praise, others simply watching in awe. The little girl stood, bowing slightly to the audience. She could feel the warmth of their admiration, the connection she had made through her music. This was more than a performance. It was a moment of triumph, courage, and self-expression. She realized that refusing to leave the keyboard had been a small act of bravery that led to something much larger. It had given her the chance to shine, to inspire, and to prove to herself that determination and love for what you do can overcome any obstacle. As she walked off the stage, the applause following her, she felt a new sense of confidence and hope. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more moments that would test her courage and skill, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. The little girl had claimed her voice, her music, and her courage. She had refused to leave the keyboard, and in doing so, had created a story that would be remembered, not just for the skill, but for the heart, determination, and passion that she brought to every note. The little girl returned to the keyboard with a quiet determination. She could feel the energy of the audience lingering, still captivated by her earlier performance. The judges were watching intently, their expressions showing curiosity, surprise, and a hint of admiration. She knew this was the moment to go beyond just playing the notes. It was time to truly win the hearts of everyone in the room. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a brief second, taking a deep breath, and then began to move again, creating a melody that was soft, tender, and full of emotion. The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was on her, yet she felt calm. Her music was a bridge between her and the audience, a way to express what words could not. She let the first few notes flow naturally, gentle but deliberate, carrying a story of hope, courage, and determination. She remembered all the times she had practiced alone, hours spent perfecting every detail, every note, and every rhythm. It all led to this moment, where the music was not just skill, but a message from her heart. The judges whispered to each other quietly, still uncertain, but some of them seemed intrigued. The little girl noticed a slight smile on one of the faces, an acknowledgement that perhaps she was more than they had expected. She did not let it distract her. Her focus remained on the keyboard. She played with precision, adding emotion and depth to each note. The audience responded instinctively, leaning forward, eyes wide with admiration, some with tears forming as they listened to the courage and beauty in her performance. Her melody grew, becoming more complex and expressive. The little girl felt herself getting lost in the music, each note flowing naturally from her fingertips. She was telling a story of persistence, of refusing to give up, of following her heart even when the world seemed to doubt her. The audience could feel it too, the way her music carried a message of bravery and passion. People began to clap softly, encouraged by the emotion, adding a rhythm to her song. She smiled slightly, feeling the energy of the room and letting it guide her further. The judges watched closely, some still hesitant, others beginning to show admiration. One of them leaned forward, resting their chin on their hand, clearly impressed by the depth of feeling in the performance. The little girl was aware of their attention, but she did not let it control her. She knew that her music was her voice, and she needed to continue expressing herself fully. Her fingers moved faster now, more confidently, weaving intricate patterns of sound that carried excitement and joy. The audience responded with gentle gasps and soft claps, completely immersed in the story she was telling. She remembered her parents watching her during practice, encouraging her to keep going even when a passage seemed impossible. Their belief in her had strengthened her courage, and now she felt it within herself, allowing her to play with more freedom and emotion than ever before. The little girl realized that this moment was bigger than just her. It was about the courage to follow one's dreams, the power of determination, and the beauty of expressing oneself fully. Every note she played was a testament to her heart and soul. The melody shifted to a more reflective tone, soft and tender. The little girl allowed the music to breathe, letting the notes linger in the air, creating a connection with everyone in the room. The audience was silent, captivated by the subtlety and honesty of her playing. The judges leaned in, their previous skepticism replaced with admiration. She could see one of them nodding slightly, acknowledging the skill and emotion she was expressing. The little girl felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that her determination and refusal to leave the keyboard had made this moment possible. She gradually increased the intensity, building the piece toward a vibrant and joyful climax. Her fingers moved with grace and energy, creating a sense of celebration and triumph. The audience clapped along softly, caught up in the rhythm and emotion of her performance. Some were smiling, others whispering to each other in amazement. The little girl felt a surge of happiness and confidence, knowing that her music was touching hearts and inspiring courage. She had faced doubt and fear, yet here she was, playing with passion and connecting with everyone around her. The judges began to nod in approval, some exchanging brief smiles, acknowledging the skill and emotion that the little girl was displaying. One of them leaned forward, eyes wide with admiration, clearly impressed by the complexity and depth of the performance. The little girl did not let the attention overwhelm her. Instead, she focused on the music, allowing each note to tell a story. She wanted the audience and the judges to understand that her courage and determination were as important as her technical skill. She wanted them to feel the journey she had been on, the struggles she had overcome, and the joy she felt through music. As she reached the final section of her piece, she played with intensity and passion. Every note was precise, every chord filled with emotion. The audience was fully engaged, some swaying to the rhythm, others clapping softly, completely absorbed in the story she was telling through the music. The little girl felt a sense of triumph and pride, knowing that her refusal to leave the keyboard had led to this moment. She had faced fear, doubt, and uncertainty, yet she had remained true to herself and her music. The last notes of her performance were soft yet powerful, lingering in the air like a gentle whisper. She held her hands above the keys for a moment, letting the sound fade naturally. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then slowly, the applause began. It grew steadily, filling the hall with warmth and admiration. The little girl smiled, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride washing over her. She had not only played a beautiful piece, but had also inspired everyone present with her courage and determination. The judges stood, some clapping, others nodding in respect. One judge even gestured for the audience to give her a standing ovation. The little girl felt a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment unlike anything she had experienced before. She had proven to herself and everyone else that courage, determination, and love for what you do can overcome any obstacle. Her refusal to leave the keyboard had turned a moment of tension into a story of inspiration and triumph. As she stepped back from the keyboard, the applause continuing, she felt a warm glow in her heart. The audience's admiration, the judges' respect, and her own sense of pride created a perfect moment of triumph. She knew that this was only one step in her journey, but it was an important one. The little girl had faced fear and doubt, had stayed true to herself, and had shared her heart through music. She left the stage with her head held high, ready to continue her journey, knowing that her courage and passion had already made a lasting impact on everyone who had witnessed it. The little girl had never felt such a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she stepped back onto the stage for the final time. The crowd had been cheering for her, their applause still lingering in the air, but this moment was different. This time, it was about leaving a lasting impression, about showing the judges and the audience the full depth of her passion and talent. She approached the keyboard carefully, her hands hovering over the keys for a heartbeat before she began to play. Each note felt alive, carrying with it the story of her courage, her determination, and her love for music. She started softly, letting the melody speak gently at first, as if introducing the audience to the world she had created with her music. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, each note carefully chosen to express an emotion that words could not capture. The audience leaned in, completely captivated, listening to the story unfolding in front of them. Some whispered to one another in admiration, while others simply sat silently, lost in the beauty of the music. The little girl felt a warm connection with them, knowing that her refusal to leave the keyboard earlier had led to this moment of pure understanding and shared emotion. The judges watched with a mixture of awe and curiosity. One of them leaned forward, studying her hands and the movement of her fingers, recognizing the skill and dedication behind every note. Another judge, who had seemed skeptical at first, now had a small smile, clearly impressed by the depth of her performance. The little girl was aware of their attention, but she did not let it sway her focus. She was playing from her heart, letting her emotions guide her fingers, and letting the music carry the story she wanted to tell. As she continued, the melody began to grow, building with layers of harmony and rhythm that created a sense of journey and adventure. Her fingers moved faster now, dancing across the keys with confidence and grace. The audience could feel the energy rising, some swaying gently to the rhythm, others clapping softly to match the flow of the music. The little girl felt a surge of joy as she played, knowing that she was not just performing, but sharing a piece of herself with everyone present. Her determination to stay at the keyboard, even when faced with doubt, had made this connection possible. She remembered the countless hours of practice, the small victories and setbacks, and the unwavering support of her family and teachers. Their encouragement had been a foundation for her courage, and she felt their presence with her now, guiding her hands and inspiring her to continue. Every note she played was a testament to their belief in her and to her own perseverance. The little girl knew that this was more than a performance. It was a celebration of all the effort, love, and dedication that had brought her to this moment. The melody shifted, becoming more tender and reflective. Her hands moved with care, each note expressing vulnerability and honesty. The audience was captivated, some holding their breath, others closing their eyes to better absorb the emotion in the music. The little girl felt a sense of intimacy, as if she were sharing a secret with everyone in the room. She had never felt this close to an audience before, and it made her playing even more meaningful. She was no longer just a young performer. She was a storyteller, using the piano to communicate her feelings and her journey. Gradually, the music grew in strength and intensity, building toward a joyful and triumphant climax. Her fingers moved swiftly, with precision and energy, creating a sound that filled the room with excitement and celebration. The audience responded instinctively, clapping along, leaning forward, and smiling at the sheer brilliance of her performance. The little girl felt a wave of happiness and pride, knowing that she had captured their attention and hearts through her courage and talent. She had faced doubt, fear, and hesitation, and had emerged victorious. The judges were visibly moved. Some nodded in approval, others exchanged glances that reflected admiration and respect. One judge even stood, applauding along with the audience, acknowledging the extraordinary skill and emotion the little girl had displayed. She continued to play, her hands flying across the keys with both precision and passion. She knew this was her chance to leave a lasting impression, to show that her courage and love for music were as strong as her technical ability. The music reached its final, powerful moments. Her fingers struck the keys with confidence and grace, weaving together a tapestry of sound that was both triumphant and heartfelt. The audience was completely absorbed, some whispering in awe, others clapping enthusiastically. The little girl could feel their energy feeding back into her performance, creating a cycle of connection and emotion that made her music even more alive. She was no longer aware of fear or hesitation. She was fully immersed in the joy of expression and the power of sharing her heart through her music. Finally, the last note resonated through the room, soft yet powerful, lingering in the air as if refusing to leave. She lifted her hands slowly, letting the sound fade naturally. The audience erupted in applause, some standing, others cheering loudly, their admiration and appreciation filling the hall. The little girl smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy washing over her. She had not only played a beautiful piece but had inspired and captivated everyone with her courage, determination, and heart. The judges approached her, offering words of praise and recognition. They spoke of her skill, her bravery, and the emotional depth of her performance. One judge even said that her refusal to leave the keyboard had shown true character and courage, qualities that went beyond musical talent. The little girl listened, feeling a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. She had faced fear and doubt, yet she had remained true to herself and her music, and now she was being recognized for it. As she stepped off the stage, the applause continuing behind her, she felt a warm glow in her chest. She knew that this moment would stay with her forever, a reminder of the power of courage, determination, and love for what you do. She had shown that even in the face of doubt, it was possible to stand firm and follow your heart. The little girl walked away from the stage with her head held high, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in the knowledge that her courage and music had already made a lasting impact on everyone who had witnessed it. It was a triumphant ending, a story of bravery and passion that would be remembered long after the last note had faded.